Discovery's Edge. The anomaly appeared on Dr. Maya Patel's screens at exactly 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. At first, she thought it was an equipment malfunction. The radiation signature pulsing from deep space matched nothing in the Titan Observatory's extensive database. But after triple-checking her instruments and running 4 separate diagnostic routines, she had to accept that what she was seeing was real. "Computer, get me Director Chen." "Priority channel," Maya commanded, her dark eyes never leaving the strange waveform patterns dancing across her holographic display. The radiation's frequency was unlike anything she'd ever encountered in her 15 years of deep space monitoring. The connection chimed almost immediately. "Dr. Patel, this better be important," came Director Chen's sleep-raffined voice. "Sir, I'm detecting an artificial radiation signature approximately 2.3 light hours from Saturn. Well, you need to see this yourself." As Maya transmitted the data, she heard the director's sharp intake of breath. The signature was clearly technological in origin, its pulses too regular, too structured to be natural. But it violated several principles of known physics, particularly in how the radiation seemed to cycle through patterns that should have been impossible according to current theory. "Have you compared this against the Kardashev database?" Chen asked, referring to humanity's comprehensive catalog of theoretical energy signatures that advanced civilizations might produce. "First thing I did, sir. No matches. This is something entirely new." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. More observatories across the solar system began picking up the signal as it grew stronger. The radiation pattern was approaching the outer edges of Saturn's orbit, and its source was finally becoming visible to their most powerful telescopes. Maya stood in the observatory's main control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time data from every major telescope in the solar system. What they revealed was extraordinary. A fleet of vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly iridescence that defied conventional material science. "They're decelerating," announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the observatory's chief physicist. "Their radiation signature is shifting as they shed velocity. At current rates, they'll enter stable orbit around Saturn within 48 hours. Director Chen, who had arrived via emergency shuttle 6 hours earlier, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the main display. "Dr. Patel, your analysis." Maya took a deep breath. "The radiation their drives are producing. It's incredibly efficient, far beyond our current capabilities. But there's something odd about their approach vector. They're taking a path that keeps them as far as possible from the inner solar system's natural radiation belts. It's as if they're actively avoiding them." "Could be coincidence," Yuki suggested, but Maya shook her head. "I don't think so. Look at their shielding configurations." She pulled up a spectral analysis of the alien vessels. "They're devoting an enormous amount of energy to radiation protection, far more than would be necessary given the background radiation levels at this distance from the sun." Before anyone could respond, a new alert blared through the control room. Maya's fingers flew across her haptic interface, pulling up the source. Her eyes widened. "They're broadcasting," she announced. "Multiple frequencies, basic mathematical sequences, first contact protocols." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe, and their first visitors seemed almost afraid of radiation levels that humans considered normal. The initial message, when they decoded it, confirmed Maya's suspicions. The aliens called themselves the Lumini, and they were astonished to find intelligent life in what they termed the Forbidden Zones, star systems whose natural radiation levels they considered lethal. "We have observed your transmissions for many cycles," the message read, "but dismissed them as impossible. No sapient species we have encountered could survive such conditions. We come in peace, seeking to understand how you endure in an environment that would kill any of our kind within days." Maya looked around the control room, seeing the same mix of excitement and apprehension on her colleagues' faces that she felt herself. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, imagining advanced beings who would arrive as teachers and guides. Instead, they had found a species that viewed Earth's natural environment with terror. The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Maya found herself at the center of it all, working with a hastily assembled team to prepare humanity's response. They needed to explain concepts that they had always taken for granted: how human biology handled radiation, how their cells repaired radiation damage, how they had built their civilization in conditions that the Lumini considered lethal. "It's ironic," she said to Director Chen late one night as they reviewed the latest data from the alien fleet. "We've spent centuries wondering if we were alone in the universe, feeling small and insignificant. Now we find out that what we thought was a handicap, evolving on a radioactive world, might actually be our greatest strength." Chen nodded, studying the holographic display of the Lumini ships, still maintaining their careful distance from Earth's radiation belts. "They're afraid of us, Dr. Pottle. Not because we're hostile, but because we've mastered something they consider impossible. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge?" The answer came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days later, the Lumini sent an urgent transmission. They had detected a massive solar flare building on the far side of the sun, one that would release enough radiation to disable their entire fleet's shielding systems. They needed help, and the only beings who could provide it were the radiation-resistant humans they had just met. Maya found herself drafting emergency protocols for a joint human-Lumini operation, something that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. As she worked, she couldn't help but smile at the thought that humanity's first act of interstellar diplomacy would be protecting advanced aliens from something as fundamental as solar radiation. "Begin evacuation procedures," she heard Director Chen ordering in the background. "Get our radiation-hardened ships ready for rescue operations. The Lumini are about to learn exactly what Earth's children can do." The story of humanity's first contact was about to become a tale not of human weakness in the face of advanced alien civilization, but of human strength in the most unexpected way possible. The radiation that had shaped their evolution, that had forced them to adapt and survive, was about to become their greatest gift to the stars. Children of the hot stars. The solar flare crisis had changed everything. After the human fleet successfully shielded the Lumini vessels from the radiation burst, the aliens' perception of humanity shifted dramatically. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the newly constructed Radiation Adaptation Research Center, watching Lumini scientists work alongside human researchers through specially designed containment barriers. "Remarkable," said Chief Scientist Zil N. Their crystalline form shimmering as they studied a holographic display of human DNA. "Your cellular repair mechanisms don't just resist radiation damage. They actively incorporate it into your biological processes." Maya nodded, still amazed by how different their new allies were. The Lumini had evolved in the spaces between stars, where natural radiation was minimal. Their bodies were beautiful crystalline structures that channeled light and energy in ways human biology couldn't match, but they were incredibly vulnerable to radiation. "We think it started with early life on Earth," Maya explained, pulling up geological data. "Our planet's core has always been radioactive. Life either had to adapt or die. Over billions of years, we didn't just survive radiation. We learned to use it." The research center buzzed with activity around them. Teams of human and Lumini scientists worked together, separated by radiation shielding but united in purpose. After the rescue operation, the Lumini Council had proposed an unprecedented exchange: human radiation resistance knowledge for Lumini faster than light technology. Commander Sarah Chen, Director Chen's daughter, and the officer who had led the rescue operation, entered the lab. Her presence commanded attention. She had become something of a legend among the Lumini after manually adjusting radiation shields during the height of the crisis. "Dr. Patel, we've received the data from the joint expedition to the Carina Nebula," Sarah announced. "You're going to want to see this." The three of them moved to the main display chamber. The Carina Nebula had been considered too radioactive for Lumini exploration, but a mixed human Lumini crew had recently completed the first survey. The data they brought back was revolutionary. These energy patterns, Maya breathed, studying the swirling clouds of radiation and matter. They're similar to our cellular repair mechanisms. The nebula isn't just producing radiation, it's creating ordered patterns within it. Like calls to like, Xyl hummed, their crystalline form resonating with excitement. Your biology mirrors the universe itself. We always assumed radiation was purely destructive, but you've shown us it can be creative. Sarah pulled up the mission logs. The Lumini crew members were amazed by how our team handled the radiation. They said watching humans work in those conditions was like seeing someone swim through fire. The comparison was apt. Where the Lumini saw deadly radiation, humans had learned to navigate its currents. Their bodies didn't just endure it. They had evolved to ride its waves, to draw strength from what others feared. There's more, Sarah continued. The Council wants to establish joint colonies in previously uninhabitable systems. With human radiation expertise and Lumini technology, we could access resources and regions of space that neither of our species could reach alone. Maya's mind raced with the possibilities. Humanity had always looked to the stars with dreams of expansion, but they had assumed their radioactive heritage would be a limitation. Instead, it was becoming their greatest asset. The lab's attention suddenly shifted as alarms began blaring. A containment field was fluctuating in one of the research chambers. Maya watched in amazement as the human scientists calmly continued their work, making adjustments while radiation levels rose around them. The Lumini observers were both terrified and fascinated. I still cannot comprehend how you do that, Xyl said, their crystalline form dimming slightly, working while bathed in energy that would shatter my people's bodies. It's not just about resistance, Maya explained, watching the humans work. We've learned to read radiation like you read light. Those scientists can feel the changes in the field, adjust their movements to work with it rather than against it. It's knowledge earned through generations of living with radiation as a constant companion. Sarah nodded. That's why the rescue operation worked. We didn't just shield your ships. We understood how the solar flare's radiation would behave. We could predict its patterns, find safe paths through what looked like chaos to your sensors. The containment field stabilized, and the research continued. But Maya noticed something had changed in Xyl posture. The alien scientist was studying the human workers with new understanding. We thought we were advanced, Xyl said softly. Our civilization is older, our technology more sophisticated in many ways. But you've mastered something we never even tried to understand. You don't just survive radiation, you speak its language. Maya smiled, remembering her own words from first contact. What they had once thought of as a handicap had become a bridge between species. Humanity's radiation-forged biology wasn't just a quirk of evolution. It was a key to unlocking parts of the universe that had remained forbidden to other spacefaring races. The universe is full of radiation, she said. Stars, nebula, black holes, they all speak in the language of energy and light. Maybe that's why Earth life evolved the way it did. We needed to learn that language to reach the stars. As if to emphasize her point, a burst of data came through from another joint expedition. This team was exploring the edges of a pulsar, gathering data that the Lumini had never been able to collect directly. Human crew members were taking readings from zones that would kill most other species instantly. We're not just adapting anymore, Sarah observed, watching the data flow in. We're opening doors that have been closed to the rest of the galaxy. The question is, are we ready for what we might find behind them? Maya looked at the humans and Lumini working together, each bringing their unique strengths to push the boundaries of what was possible. They were no longer just children of Earth. They were becoming teachers, guides, and protectors for species that had never dared to dance with radiation's fire. The next phase of human history was beginning, and it would be written in the language of light and energy that their ancestors had learned so long ago, in the shadow of a radioactive world that had forced them to become something unique in the galaxy. Crucible of stars. The emergency alert came during the third shift of deep space monitoring. Maya's research team had been tracking radiation patterns in the Carina Nebula when the Lumini distress signal cut through their normal communications channels. "This is Settlement Lyra 7. The transmission crackled. "Our stellar nursery containment systems are failing. Radiation levels rising beyond critical. 20,000 colonists at risk. Requesting immediate assistance." Commander Sarah Chen's voice came through almost immediately after. "Dr. Patel, we need your team. The Lumini settlement is inside an artificial habitat near a stellar formation zone. Their radiation shielding is collapsing." Maya was already moving, her mind racing through calculations. Stellar nurseries were among the most radiation-intense regions of space, where new stars formed in violent bursts of energy. The Lumini had established research outposts to study them from a safe distance, protected by layers of advanced shielding technology. "How long do they have?" Maya asked, boarding the emergency shuttle to the command center. "Hours at most. The Lumini evacuation ships can't get close enough without their crews being killed by the radiation. We're their only hope." The command center was chaos when Maya arrived. Holographic displays showed the situation in brutal clarity. The Lumini settlement's protective fields were unraveling, letting in deadly radiation from the surrounding stellar nursery. The settlement itself was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline structure that normally channeled and redirected radiation away from its inhabitants. But something had gone wrong. "Status report," Sarah demanded as Maya joined her at the central console. "The stellar nursery is entering an active phase," reported Dr. James Wong, their astrophysicist. "Multiple protostars are beginning simultaneous fusion reactions." The radiation surge overwhelmed their primary containment systems. Maya studied the data, her eyes narrowing. "These energy patterns, they're not random. The protostars are resonating with each other, creating feedback loops. That's why the Lumini shielding failed. It wasn't designed to handle synchronized radiation pulses." "Can we get our ships close enough for evacuation?" Sarah asked. "Better." Maya's fingers flew across the controls, mapping the radiation patterns. "We can save the settlement itself. Look at these waves. They're like the patterns we studied in the Carina Nebula. If we can match their frequency." Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. "We could redirect the radiation instead of just blocking it, like surfing a wave instead of trying to stop it." "Exactly. But we'll need pilots who can feel the radiation patterns, work with them instead of against them. And we'll need to modify our shift shields to amplify those patterns instead of blocking them." Sarah was already moving. "I'll assemble volunteer teams." "How many ships?" 5. Maya pulled up a geometric pattern on the main display. "We'll position them here, 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 and here. Each ship will need to generate a specific frequency that, when combined with the others, will create a resonance pattern that redirects the stellar nursery's radiation around the settlement." The next hour was a blur of preparation. Maya worked with engineering teams to modify the radiation shields while Sarah briefed the volunteer pilots. These weren't just any crews. They were veterans of the solar flare rescue, humans who had learned to read radiation like sailors reading the wind. "Remember," Maya told the assembled pilots, "you're not fighting the radiation. You're working with it, feeling its rhythms. Trust your instincts. Human bodies have been doing this for millions of years." The mission launched with brutal urgency. 5 ships, crewed by humans who had evolved on a radioactive world, flew into conditions that would kill most species instantly. Maya monitored from the command center, watching as radiation levels around the ships rose to terrifying heights. "Position achieved," the first ship reported. "Beginning resonance pattern." One by one, the ships activated their modified shields. The effect was immediate and beautiful. Waves of radiation began flowing around their positions, creating patterns of light and energy visible even to normal sensors. Settlement Lyra 7. Sarah transmitted. Hold position. We're establishing a safe corridor through the radiation. Maya watched the energy readings in awe. The pilots weren't just redirecting the radiation. They were working with it, using the natural resonance of the stellar nursery to create paths of relative calm through the chaos. It was like watching someone part a river with their bare hands. Radiation levels in the settlement dropping, James reported. The containment field is stabilizing. But they weren't done yet. A new protostar began its fusion reaction, sending fresh waves of radiation through the region. Maya saw the pattern changing seconds before the alert sounded. All ships, adjust your frequencies, she commanded. Match the new resonance. The pilots responded instantly, their ships shifting position slightly, their shields adapting to the changing conditions. They moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, working with energies that should have destroyed them. Hours passed as they maintained the protective pattern. The Lumini watched in amazement as human crews worked in conditions their own species couldn't survive for seconds. When relief ships finally arrived, carrying improved shielding technology, the humans had done more than save lives. They had demonstrated mastery over forces that most species could only fear. "We've never seen anything like this," the Lumini settlement leader told them afterward. "Your people didn't just rescue us. You showed us a new way to understand radiation itself." Maya stood with Sarah in the command center, watching the settlement's new containment systems come online. The human ships were returning, their crews tired but triumphant. "We didn't just survive today," Sarah said quietly. "We proved something. Radiation isn't just a hazard to be avoided. It's a force that can be understood, worked with, even shaped." Maya nodded, thinking of their ancestors who had first learned to live with radiation on Earth. Maybe that's our real gift to the galaxy. Not just the ability to survive radiation, but the knowledge that it doesn't have to be an enemy. Sometimes the most powerful forces in the universe can become allies if you learn to speak their language. As if in response, the stellar nursery flared with new light, its radiation dancing in patterns that most species would never dare to study up close. But humans would be there, reading those patterns, learning their rhythms, continuing the journey that had begun on a radioactive planet called Earth. The universe was vast and filled with radiation, but that was no longer a barrier. It was an invitation, written in a language that only humanity had learned to read. The shielded path. 6 months after the Lyra 7 incident, the Radiation Adaptation Research Center had tripled in size. Maya walked through its expanded halls, passing teams of scientists from a dozen different species working alongside human researchers. The successful rescue operation had transformed humanity's status in the galactic community. They were no longer just curiosity, but teachers. The latest test results are remarkable, Zyle Ann announced as Maya entered the main laboratory. The Lumini scientist was directing the simulation of their new hybrid shielding technology. "By incorporating your radiation writing principles into our crystalline matrices, we've increased efficiency by 300%. Maya watched the simulation with satisfaction. The new shields didn't just block radiation. They worked with it, channeling and redirecting energy in ways that mimicked human cellular processes. It was a perfect fusion of human intuition and Lumini technical expertise. "Commander Chen's team is ready to test the prototype," she said. "They're installing it on the Prometheus for its first deep space trial." The Prometheus was humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, built with Lumini technology, but modified to accommodate human radiation resistance. Where Lumini ships needed massive shielding that consumed most of their power, human ships could operate with lighter protection, making them faster and more maneuverable. Sarah Chen met them in the shipyard, her uniform bearing the new insignia of the Joint Species Space Force. The massive form of the Prometheus loomed behind her, its hull incorporating both human and Lumini design elements. "The engineering team says we're ready," Sarah reported. "The new shields are integrated with the drive system. If this works, we'll be able to travel through high radiation zones that other species have to avoid completely." The test flight was more than just a technological demonstration. It was a proof of concept for the future of interstellar travel. If successful, it would open up vast regions of space that had been considered too dangerous to explore. "We have visitors," Xyl noted, their crystalline form shimming with excitement. A delegation of Centauri observers was approaching. The crystalline species had been skeptical of human radiation resistance claims until the Lyra 7 rescue. Now they were eager to learn. "Your species continues to surprise us," said first observer HFY, their translucent form catching the light. "We have traveled the stars for 10,000 years, yet never imagined radiation could be worked with rather than against." Maya led them through the prototype specifications. The new shield design incorporated principles learned from studying human DNA repair mechanisms, creating dynamic fields that could adapt to changing radiation conditions. "The key was changing how we think about radiation," she explained. "Instead of treating it as an enemy to be blocked, we learned to understand its patterns, its rhythms. Like learning to swim in a strong current rather than trying to build a perfect wall." The launch countdown began. The Prometheus would attempt a journey that would have been suicide for any other species, a direct route through the Carina Nebula's heart, where radiation levels were high enough to destroy conventional shields in seconds. Maya joined the observation team, watching as the massive ship powered up its new hybrid drives. The shields came online, creating patterns of light that rippled across the hull like water. "Radiation levels nominal," reported the engineering team. "Shield resonance patterns holding steady. Drive system responding perfectly." The Prometheus lifted smoothly from its berth, its engines glowing with contained power. As it rose through the atmosphere, Maya could see the shield patterns adapting, working with Earth's radiation belts rather than fighting them. "This is Prometheus Actual," Sarah's voice came through clear and confident. "Beginning FTL sequence. All systems go." The ship's faster-than-light drive engaged, creating a bubble of warped space around the vessel. But unlike traditional Lumini ships, which had to plot careful courses around radiation sources, the Prometheus aimed directly for the nebula's core. "Entering high radiation zone," Sarah reported. "Shield resonance holding steady. The radiation, it's beautiful out here. The patterns are like nothing we've ever seen." Maya watched the sensor data flowing back, showing radiation levels that would have killed most species instantly. But the Prometheus's hybrid shields were turning that deadly energy into useful power, actually growing stronger as they absorbed and redirected the nebula's output. "Remarkable," HFY whispered. "Your ship isn't just surviving the radiation, it's using it. Like a plant using sunlight for growth." "That's exactly what we learned from studying Earth life," Maya explained. "Radiation doesn't have to be destructive. Living things on our world learn to use it, to draw energy from it. We just had to apply that principle on a larger scale." The test flight was a complete success. The Prometheus emerged from the nebula with its shields actually stronger than when it entered, having absorbed and adapted to the radiation patterns it encountered. It had covered a distance in hours that would have taken other ships weeks to navigate safely. "This changes everything," Xyl said as they reviewed the flight data. "With these new drives and shields, we can explore regions of space that have been off-limits since our species first reached the stars." Maya nodded, thinking of the possibilities. "And that's just the beginning. Every new radiation pattern we encounter teaches us something new. The universe is full of energy waiting to be understood, not just avoided." The success of the Prometheus sparked a new era of cooperation. More species came to Earth, seeking to learn from the humans who had mastered radiation. Research centers were established, combining different species' technologies and insights with humanity's unique understanding of radiation. "We were so focused on protecting ourselves from radiation that we never thought to understand it," HFY reflected. "Your species showed us that sometimes the most dangerous forces can become the most powerful allies." As Maya watched teams of humans and aliens working together, she realized they were creating something unprecedented, a new way of approaching the universe itself. Humanity's radiation resistance wasn't just a quirk of evolution anymore. It was becoming the foundation of a revolution in space travel, one that would open up the galaxy in ways no one had imagined possible. The path forward was clear now, marked not by the absence of radiation but by its presence, its patterns, its possibilities. Humanity had found their role in the galactic community, not just as survivors of a radioactive world, but as pioneers who could teach others to see radiation not as an enemy, but as a force to be understood, harnessed, and ultimately mastered. Sarah's voice came through one final time as the Prometheus completed its landing sequence. The stars are calling, and now we can answer, not by hiding from their fire, but by learning to dance with it. Legacy of light. The warning came from the furthest edges of known space. A massive gamma-ray burst was approaching the Centauri home system, powerful enough to overwhelm even their most advanced shielding technology. Billions of lives were at risk, and evacuation would be impossible in the time they had left. Maya stared at the data streaming across her screens in the Joint Species Command Center. The radiation wave would hit the Centauri worlds in less than 72 hours. Even with faster-than-light travel, moving an entire civilization was out of the question. "We can't evacuate them," Commander Sarah Chen said, stating the obvious. "But maybe we don't have to." Maya looked up, seeing the same idea forming in her friend's mind that had just occurred to her. The Prometheus shield technology. If we could scale it up, could we create a radiation shield around their entire star system? Sarah finished. "Has anything like that ever been attempted?" "Never," said Xylan, their crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "The power requirements would be astronomical. The computational complexity of managing radiation patterns on that scale. But it's possible," Maya insisted, already running calculations. "We've learned so much about working with radiation patterns instead of just blocking them. If we could position enough ships with hybrid shields in the right configuration." The next hour was a blur of activity as they refined the concept. They would need every human crewed vessel equipped with the new hybrid shields, positioned in a precise geometric pattern around the Centauri system. Each ship would have to maintain perfect synchronization, creating a massive web of interlocking radiation fields. "Even if we get every ship there in time," Sarah pointed out, "the radiation levels will be beyond anything we've ever encountered. The shields weren't designed for this kind of power." "Then we'll have to adapt," Maya said firmly. "Just like our ancestors did on Earth. We didn't evolve our radiation resistance by playing it safe." The call went out across human space. Every ship with hybrid shield technology was needed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Vessel after vessel reported in, their crews volunteering despite knowing the extreme danger they would face. The Centauri were both amazed and humbled by the human response. "You would risk your lives, your ships, for our people?" First Observer X-Ray asked during the emergency council meeting. "That's what neighbors do," Sarah replied simply. "Besides, this is what humans are made for. Our ancestors survived on a radioactive world so that one day we could help others survive too." The fleet assembled with unprecedented speed. Over 300 ships, each crew trained in radiation riding techniques, each vessel equipped with the hybrid shields that combined human intuition with alien technology. They would have one chance to get it right. Maya worked with the fleet commanders to coordinate the shield pattern. The ships would need to form a three-dimensional lattice around the Centauri system, each vessel maintaining a specific frequency that, when combined with the others, would create a protective field large enough to shelter an entire civilization. "Remember," she told the assembled crews in her final briefing, "you're not fighting the radiation. You're working with it, understanding it, redirecting it. Trust your training, trust your instincts, trust the billion years of evolution that taught humanity how to dance with radiation's fire." The fleet moved into position with hours to spare. From the command center, Maya watched as hundreds of ships took their places in the massive geometric pattern they had calculated. The sight was breathtaking. Human vessels arranged in a perfect lattice around the Centauri stars, preparing to attempt something never before seen in the history of space travel. Gamma-ray burst approaching, announced the sensor officer. Impact in 15 minutes. All ships, begin shield resonance. Sarah commanded. Remember your training. Feel the patterns, work with them, not against them. The hybrid shields activated across the fleet, creating a web of interconnected energy fields. On the main display, Maya could see the pattern taking shape, a massive, dynamic structure of light and power that encompassed an entire star system. 10 minutes to impact. Maya watched the radiation levels climbing as the leading edge of the gamma-ray burst approached. The ship's crews would be feeling it now, their bodies sensing the approaching wave of energy in ways that other species could never understand. Pattern stability at 98%, reported the control team. All ships maintaining position. 5 minutes. The first wisps of the gamma-ray burst reached them. The shield pattern rippled but held, hundreds of human crews working in perfect synchronization to redirect the deadly energy around the Centauri system. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The gamma-ray burst hit with full force. Energy readings went off the scales as radiation levels soared to heights never before recorded. But the human fleet held. Their shields didn't just block the radiation. They worked with it, channeled it, turned its power back on itself in a dance of energy that was beautiful and terrifying to behold. Shield pattern holding, Maya announced, watching in awe as the combined power of 300 human crews turned the deadliest radiation burst ever recorded into a flowing river of light around the Centauri worlds. The system is protected. For 6 hours, the human fleet maintained their position as the gamma-ray burst washed over them. Ships' crews worked to exhaustion and beyond, their natural radiation resistance pushed to its absolute limits. But they held. Not a single vessel broke formation, not a single crew faltered in their duty. When it was finally over, when the last of the deadly radiation had been redirected safely past the Centauri system, the scope of what humanity had achieved began to sink in. They had saved not just a few thousand colonists or a single settlement, but an entire civilization of billions. We never imagined this was possible, Anxra said in the aftermath, their crystalline form glowing with emotion. To stand against such power, to shape it, to turn it away. You have shown us that there are no true limits, only our failure to imagine beyond them. Maya stood with Sarah in the command center, watching as the human fleet began to stand down from their positions. Every crew was exhausted. Many would need treatment for radiation exposure. But all had survived. More than survived, they had proven that humanity's greatest perceived weakness was actually their greatest strength. What do you think this means for the future? Sarah asked quietly. Maya smiled, thinking of how far they had come from those first uncertain days of first contact. I think it means we've finally found our place in the galaxy, not just as the species that survived radiation, but as the ones who learned to understand it, to work with it, to use it to protect others. The children of a radioactive world, grown up to become its guardians, Sarah mused. Exactly, Maya agreed. Our ancestors looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them, never knowing that the very thing that made our world seem harsh and dangerous would one day make us the protectors of all who live among those stars. As the fleet returned home, as celebrations broke out across human and alien worlds alike, Maya knew they had crossed a threshold. Humanity had proven they were more than just survivors. They were pioneers, teachers, and guardians, uniquely suited to help other species face the challenges of a universe filled with radiation. The legacy of Earth's children would not be written in fear of radiation's power, but in their mastery of it, their understanding of it, and their willingness to use that knowledge to protect all who shared the stars with them. They had become what their ancestors could never have imagined, not victims of their radioactive heritage, but its masters, and through that mastery, the protectors of all who dared to dream among the stars.